In terms of working from the start, the design process took quite a number of months. Sandy was commissioned and we went through a lot of stages with the client in terms of what they wanted to see, because the brief was quite loose, so there wasn't really a specific brief for the sculpture. So just deciding what the sculpture was going to be took quite a long time, where it was going to be sited, and then once we'd cleared all that up, then the process of making it took about a year from start to finish, and it was all made in the studio. So it's a fairly straightforward process where Andy makes a frame with a welded rod, and then the process that he's developed over quite a few years now of cladding the sculpture in small pieces of flat bar, which range in size, especially on something that scale. There's a lot of range in the size of the mosaic that goes on it. So he essentially made the frame first. Making the frame in the first place was quite difficult, in that the sculpture itself is 10 metres high, but our studio is only 7.5 metres. And it's fairly basic inside the studio, so we've got a block and tackle, and he makes the sculptures. He tends to make, well, in this case, he made the head and pulled it up onto the block and tackle and then started working down the way. Once the frame was ready, he cut it back down again and more or less started from the bottom and worked up with the cladding. A lot of hard work, and really it was made by two people, you know, which is really quite a remarkable feat, you know, with fairly rudimentary materials, welding torches, that's it really. This sort of shimmering effect, and part of the way that he does the construction, especially in this case, was that he wanted to produce something that was relatively ephemeral looking, even though it was made of steel. So if you imagine the same figure as a solid surface, it would seem much heavier and much more sort of predominant in the landscape, and he wanted to produce something that had a sort of lightness about it. And the effect of the steel plates don't sort of butt up exactly to one another. There's gaps in between them, and sometimes they overlap, so that once they're galvanised, it's almost sort of like a set of sort of low-grade mirrors that are all set at slightly different angles from one another, so that the light sort of reflects off them and has this effect of making the sculpture look a lot lighter than it actually is. Fundamentally, it's galvanised for the protection of it, but the galvanising does give it this very light effect that you wouldn't, I think, would be difficult to recreate with another process. It's really been a development. When he first started making these sculptures, he sort of made a frame, and then it was more or less not entirely filled in. It was left like what he's really creating is a drawing in 3 dimensions with. People talk about steel wire. It makes it sound like something that you can bend really easily. It's actually really hard work bending the steel. That's all done by hand too. But in the beginning, he always used rods to do that effect, and he still sometimes does that. But the mosaic effect just lends itself to being able to draw in a different way on the sculptures. He's very interested in the texture that's on the surface of the sculptures. I think he is a fan of galvanising in essentially in what it does for the sculptures, which is it protects them, and it also makes the work viable in the landscape for which we're making it. You know, we just wouldn't be able to work in mild steel and put the work outside if it wasn't for the galvanising process.